So, to get to Sicily, first we need to start in New York. A couple of weeks ago I was watching a documentary on Netflix, Fear City, and they were talking about the Mafia in New York. And they're explaining that there were 5 Mafia families called the Commission, and there were 8 building companies called the Club. And in the third one of these, Trump's name kept coming up. So presumably, Trump was in the Club, one of these 8 building companies that controlled all the buildings that went up in New York in the 70s, 80s and 90s. So we have a possible connection between Trump and the Mafia. So, are there any connections between Trump and the Mafia? Plenty. None have ever gone to court, none have ever been proven, but lots and lots of allegations, and where there's plenty of smoke, there's usually quite a bit of fire. So I'll let you do your reading of this one. Donald Trump's connections to individuals and businesses linked to the Mafia have been extensively documented by investigative journalists and government records, though he has never been charged with any crime relating to these associations. These connections largely stem from his time as a real estate developer in New York. Okay, so we have connections between Trump and the Mafia. And that's before you get to his name, Donald. Don, the ultimate authority, often chosen by capos or succeeding the previous boss. So we have Don, the Dan, the Donald. And just to add an extra one into there, when we had the Time Travelers 1888 thing and Baron Trump was guided through the underworld by the last president, Donald, just to keep in mind that might not necessarily be Donald Trump, because J.D. Vance's middle name is also Donald. But as that we're not here to talk about them, or waste our time talking about them, we're going to be looking at the Mafia. Now, where did the Mafia come from? Sicily. So that's where we're going to start the investigations. Sicily. And we're going to start with the Armenians, which is predominantly where a lot of the Sicilian families came from. The early history of Sicily is the Armenians. So, if we look at the word Armenian, again we'll break that down. We've obviously got El, the Israelites' god, and then Means. And it just happens that the word Mean means Naga, which also means serpent. So the Armenians can be read as the serpent worshippers of El. And we know that's the Irish. So if it was the Irish, well, we know it was the Irish, but if we think it was the Irish that were these Sicilians, if we look at Malta and all the places around that, we always find remnants of giants. So do we find any remnants of giants on Sicily? 1 or 2. We have the city of giants, Messina. We have the giants that they celebrate, Matter and Griffon, which is reminded me a lot of Gog and Magog, where they celebrate ancient giants, weirdly. We have the fallen Atlas statue. We have Enceladus, the giant who is buried under Etna. We have the one-eyed giant, the Cyclops. We also have another giant called Alpos, and Alpos was actually killed by Dionysus. Now this is where I keep saying that they're forgotten, because the Dionysus, the Greek god Dionysus, is hermaphrodite, and the priests that worship Dionysus used to cut the nuts off, dress as women all day, because they thought their god was hermaphrodite, without knowing that their god is Sirius, who just happens to have a male and female aspects to it. So it's not, their god isn't a hermaphrodite, it just has males and females sides to it. So that's Alpos. We also have the Gorgons, which include Medusa, Cytherea and Uriel. We'll keep an eye on that Uriel because she's coming back up again. So we have the Elemians, and they lived in a place called Eris. So in Eris, initially, they built a temple, the Temple of Segesta, which is a temple to Venus and Aphrodite. Venus being the Roman fertility goddess, Aphrodite being fertility goddess. Fertility goddesses are always Sirius, so a temple to Sirius. After that came into a state of disrepair, they used some of it to build a chapel, and this was called Mother Church of Eris. Now, Eris is, another name for Eris is Potnia. Potnia, the mistress of animals. So every time we see a fertility goddess with animals, it's Potnia or Eris. Something interesting one. This is probably the closest because she's got a lion in one hand and a deer in the other hand. Just remember the deer bit. So, the word Eris. So the word Eris is actually home of the name Eric and Erika. Erika comes from the name Eris. And right now, leap into mind, I can only think of one of their players who is called Erika. Erika Scary Eyes, Scary Lady. So, Erika took the name Kirk. Now, everyone who knows anything by now knows the name Kirk means church. So, if we took the name Eris or Erika Kirk and changed the name to Erika Church, and as the name Eris comes from Sicily, what happens if we put the name Eris Church Sicily? Straight back to the Mother Church of Eris, the Royal Cathedral. So, let's have a look at the Sicilian flag. Obviously, we've got the two Danite eagles, as it was the two authors who took Christianity to the Mediterranean to start off with. We have a Danite eagle, and weirdly showing up there is the fleur-de-lis, and that's from the tribe of Reuben. Now we have two flags. We have the flag of the Isle of Man and the flag of Sicily. Now apparently the flag of Sicily, the image is of Medusa, the Gorgon at its centre? I would speculate that that is Potnia, Erika. I would say that that's Erika in the middle. Basically because of her importance back to Sicily. We also need to find if there's any connection, because if that's the Isle of Man, well, that was King Manannán, who was a Danite. His daughter was Queen Neve of the Tir na Nog. So is this Queen Neve on the Sicilian flag? And we also have his granddaughter, who was Queen Zionine. So is this Zionine that's on the flag? And is Erika both Zionine or Queen Neve? Either way, there's questions to be asked about that one. So we have Potnia, Erika, the mother goddess of animals. So we're looking for the Mafia in Sicily. So let's have a look at the word Mafia. We already know from Masons that the Ma, M-A, means mama or mother. So does the word Fia mean anything on its own? Well, it just happens that the word Fia means deer. So the word Mafia, Fia, means mother deer, a doe. So let's follow this deer and Mafia connection. And first we need to nip to the Ukraine, where we find deer Mafia. Now this is a Ukrainian Mafia record company. Who are collecting money for the Ukrainian criminals that are currently fighting Russia. I'll let you do read about all the Ukrainian Mafia's illegalities. And there we go. Dear Mafia. The Ukrainian record company collecting money for the Nazis. So we have a Mafia connection, a Nazi connection, a deer connection. So let's have a look at the tribe of Naphtali, whose emblem is a deer. So the Israelite tribe of Naphtali, obviously all the tribes of Israel came from Ireland. So do we have any connections with deers going back to Ireland? Obviously we do, because we have a tribe of warriors who basically upheld the law. We know the word Fia means deer, and they were called the Fianna. Well, that's Fianna. They can also be spelt Fiadh, Fiadh, and DH means the. So Fianna can simply mean the deer. And one of their main leaders was Finn McCool, who also stood guard over the Pillars of Hercules. So if you take the word Naphtali, what does that word mean? It means, the name Naphtali means my struggle. Hold on a minute, we've come across that expression somewhere else before. My struggle, Naphtali. Oh, Mein Kampf translates to my struggle. So we had the Ukrainian Nazis, and now we've got the German Nazis. So are there any connections between Hitler and deers? It's a bit of a speculation, but yes, we obviously have some connections between Nazis and deers. More deers and more deers. Oh, and even a medal for a deer. So now we have connections between deers, Nazis, the tribes of Israel. But as we started in America with Trump's connection to the Mafia, we find another deer. And one guess where that deer is. The deer is Chicago, outside Trump Towers. And isn't it Chicago where the Mafia came from initially? So we have a deer outside Trump Towers in Chicago. We have deers on Trump's golf courses. We have deer, Mr. President. We have Trump and his little spat with John Deere. And we have the tribe of Naphtali, who are deers. So the Mafia are deers, the Fianna are deers, Eris has a connection to deers, Trump has a connection to deers, and Hitler has a connection to deers. So while you're doing your research in future, you can look for the 33s, you can look for the Danite eagles and the serpents. Now you can also add to the list, you need to look for deers. And isn't there a film coming out in 6 months, the Steven Spielberg film coming out, who one of the main scenes in that is a deer? But I'll let you do your own research from there, but keep an eye out for deers.